Record.
All right, so calling the meeting to order. Roll call here, everybody.
Patty, can you do the roll call?
Okay, today is October the 9th, 2018, and this is Affordable Housing Advisory Committee has been called to order by our Vice Chair. And I wanted to make the board aware that Cheney is absent and McBready is excused. Newsall? Newshouse? Newhousel.
Yeah.
Okay. Here.
Here.
Pepe.
Here.
Renfrance is absent. Schnell.
Here.
Contreras.
Here.
Jackson. Or Jenkins. I'll get it here.
Here.
Jenkins.
Here.
Okay, so we have 5 present, 2 absent, and 1 excused.
Citizen input at this time, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You have anything for us?
No.
Okay.
Are you a citizen? Shocking, right? She's
Never know. Never know. All right, so I guess we move on to election of chair.
Which we'll have to wait till the next meeting.
Next one, okay. Approval of minutes, we can't do, correct?
Next meeting, correct.
Okay. Discussion recommendations, incentive plan, and individual incentives.
Okay. All right. So
That'd be you.
that would be me. So what I thought we would do is I'm going to, because we had a couple people that weren't at the last meeting, a couple people that were, I'm just going to repeat myself a little bit for some of you. Again, we're here because the purpose of this particular board is to make a recommendation to complete the Affordable Housing Incentive Plan, which is to be done every 3 years, so triennially. So that is the sole function of this particular board. Every 3 years, we're required prior to December 30th to complete this. Why we have to complete it is because it's required in order to receive our state housing initiative partnership funds. So if we don't complete the report, then we don't get our approvals, which means we don't get our money, which is really critical for our partner agencies to complete their missions of providing affordable housing locally. So that is why we are here. So the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee Triennial Report, the Local Housing Incentive Plan, and you'll hear me call it the LHIP because that's just the lingo. So the LHIP is basically required by statute, and it basically has 11 incentive strategies that the city has to review on the triennial basis. And there are some that they have to do in order to receive money, and then there's other things that they just want every local government to review. In some cases, this is kind of a catch-all. So they're not saying everything has to be done in every community because every community is different. So, but you need to look at everything and explain why you're not going to recommend approval or why you want it to be implemented. So in front of you, you're going to see the list of the 11 things on this sheet of paper here that everyone has to look at. Now, that being said, this is the this will be the 3rd time we've done the local housing incentive plan. This will be time number 3. So when you first start doing this, it's a lot more in-depth, but as you do it again and again, conditions don't change that much in a community. However, in some cases things do change. So, when we last did it, it was 2015. Prior to that, it was 2012. 2012 was a little rocky time. I think we all know that. So, 2018, there's some things that have changed and some things that the city staff is doing that actually impact some of these things here. So we're going to go through each of the incentives. What I did actually for today, I was trying to, and I kind of came up with a schedule on how we were going to look at these. And this is just a rough outline. And what I wanted to do was, I was going to kind of hit the low-hanging fruit today. So this is stuff that's either required or things that maybe we haven't recommended in the past that we don't see any, staff doesn't foresee any changes to, but that, this is kind of to ease us into some of the bigger changes, which we can discuss at the next meeting, and I'll kind of hit on those at the end of this one. So we can kind of start, and I'm going to go in order of how it is, and you'll see I have the incentive listed, and I actually marked where if it's required by statute or not, and then what meeting we're going to be discussing at, and then kind of a staff recommendation on kind of where we're sitting right now. Because typically what happens is we'll make a staff recommendation, and then the board will make their recommendation, either to concur or they want to go out on their own with their own recommendation to council, which is fine as well. So, you don't have to go with staff. If you think you want to recommend something different, you can do so, okay? And you can see they're not necessarily in order, again, so because I tried to pick and choose each incentive, and so we can just dive right in at the end of the process. So after this meeting, at the end, maybe at the end of next meeting, maybe at the third meeting if we have to have it, that's when the board's going to make their recommendations. So, and once you make those recommendations, we will put it in the final report, and then it'll go to City Council. It is scheduled for City Council on December the 3rd. There are really only 2 dates that can go in December. December 3rd, I think, is one council meeting. It's what it's scheduled for. I think there's a second council meeting on that date, but we're shooting for December 3rd because I will be out of the country the rest of December. So that is why we're going to shoot for the 3rd. All right, so jumping right in, my first item is, okay, so the first incentive, and this is a required incentive, which is expedited processing of approvals for development orders or permits for affordable housing projects over other housing projects. Again, this is required by state law. So we do have a process in place for expediting these permits for our partner agencies and any projects that are funded with state and federal funds. So not only from agencies like Cape Coral Housing and Habitat for Humanity, who are 2 primary partners, but also if we have any sort of tax credit projects that come through for maybe zoning approval or site plan approval. We've expedited when we did our multifamily that's off of Southeast 8, those permits were expedited. That was funded through, that was built by the Housing Authority.
So a lot of this is already in place.
So this one is in place.
Okay.
Basically what happens, they have a cover sheet when it comes through, they're identified, that's basically it's signed off by Millie and I. The cover sheet goes on and they get moved to the front of the line. For bigger projects, apartment complex, things like that, Millie and I's responsibility is to shepherd it through the process. So that's really a lot of us saying, where are the reviews, this needs to be moved forward. Luckily, our department is it's small enough, and we're all, know the processes enough that everyone kind of knows, how to work it through the process. So at this point, and we haven't had a lot of issues with it, I don't think. It just kind of...
We don't get many projects that we need to...
Yeah, it kind of flows pretty easy for the houses. But at this point, staff is just going to say, just maintaining our existing process is kind of what we're going to be recommending to you all. So that's pretty straightforward. Again, that's the required one. So the next one is one that's a little more that is going to see some changes as a result of some recent changes that we've made here. And I'm going to start passing out. Do you want to pass them out, Millie? This is mine. Okay, so we're going to pass out a number of things, and we're going to discuss this for you.
Application and
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to give everyone this while you go through.
Oh, okay.
So you have another hard copy of the old report, so if you wanted to look at it. That's the 2015.
Yeah, I remember.
I think some of our names are on it.
Yeah. Well,
You have that one perfect, yeah.
go back way long.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at the first one. Thank you.
Okay. So, the next topic that we're going to discuss, and if any of you have any questions, as we're going through, or comments that you have on that, please feel free to interject. And I'll answer the best I can. So this has kind of evolved since the first report, actually. So the first report that we did, there was a recommendations to create a deferral program for the impact fees for our projects funded through our state and federal dollars. They made that recommendation, and the original one is on page in 2015 report. It's on page 6. So when we made that recommendation, let me start over. In Cape Coral, we charge impact fees for everything, pretty much. And so we see it as a barrier to getting people into housing. It just adds to the increased cost. So the first year that we looked at this, we talked about deferring it. In here, they ask you to look at waiving. Our city attorney has opined time and time again, you cannot waive impact fees. You can only defer them, which is why the board recommended a deferral program. At that time, in 2008, we had to come up with a funding source to do so. So at that point, we created a pot of money out of the SHIP dollars that would be used to pay impact fees. 2008, I think we all know what happened. The market fell out and no one was building new homes. So in 2012, when we looked at it, we kept it. However, we kept it unfunded because we weren't getting any dollars. So it went unfunded. Now we're going to fast forward a little bit. After 2015, we got rid of that particular strategy in our local housing assistance plan. So we got rid of the mechanism that would create that deferred impact fees. And we did it for a number of reasons, but mostly because Florida Housing had indicated that to us that they wanted us to shrink the number of strategies that we had and programs that we had in our SHIP funds. So we really pared down everything we were doing with those funding. And we still weren't receiving a lot of money, so we'll also say that. Because again, the legislature has been sweeping money from the SHIP funds since 2009. Sweep, they take it, they balance the budget. All right, so last year we were approached by our partner agencies, specifically Habitat for Humanity and Cape Coral Housing Development Corporation. They approached city management. They asked if they would consider doing a impact fee deferral pilot program for their agencies. The city manager agreed to look into it. We took it to city council, and city council agreed to put the pilot project in place. So Ordinance 3618 was passed not that long ago, recently, in the 19th of June, actually, so just recently. What it does is it defers impact fees for our partner agencies up to 100 units over a period of 5 years. So basically we have the 2 agencies that are participating. Basically what happens is that the agencies would apply for the funding, and there's an application process that has to be reviewed by staff. The agency will then enter into agreement with the city of Cape Coral that states that they're going to sell it within a certain period of time, that it's going to be sold to an income qualified person. Those get council approval as well, and those are recorded as an agreement with the agency and the city of Cape Coral tied to the particular lot. All right, this impact fee deferral is only for city impact fees and do not include utility expansion impact fees. So it's really only paying, it's the $5,668.66 that is the single family impact fee. So it's the fire rescue impact fee, the ALS impact fee, the Parks and Rec impact fee, the police impact fee, and the road impact fee. What's not included in there that we also correct is this, we collect the school impact fee on behalf of Lee County School District, but we don't keep it, so that's not included. And again, utility expansion fees are not included, and they were not included for a reason, because we do have a deferral process for those when the utilities come through. So that's kind of where we were on that. So we are in process now. In fact,
We have 9.
we have 9 right now since June.
9.
9 homes that have come in requesting the deferral
Under the.
under the new
Under
deferral.
the
So when, if it's deferred, when does it get paid back?
It always,
How does it get
5
paid?
years.
no, actually it's not. It's upon first transfer of the property. So,
Of the people we sell it.
of you sell it to, right.
So-
So
So are they,
it's lien.
right, but is the agency leasing them until that point, or what?
No, they're gonna
Also,
sell.
what's the benefit though? Like, I'm not following, like, I just,
Okay, so the benefit, here's
Yeah,
the,
that's
here's
what I'm
the
trying to figure out where
thing.
the-
This was
this-
not done to reduce the price of the housing, okay? This, because these clients are heavily subsidized with state and federal grant funds. They already are getting a reduced price and they're gapping, okay? What it does is to help the agencies be able to put more units in the ground. So by reducing their costs, they can do more units. That's really the intent
That's
of
what I was
it.
wondering.
There it is. And basically, we were trying to find the best way to do this, and we went with upon first transfer, because typically they do transfer over.
That's what I said, are they
It's
leasing them or are
not
they
like,
transferring?
it's not a quick process. I would tell you that we kind of reviewed our clients. People that buy with Cape Coral Housing Development, who tend to be our higher income, low income, they tend to transfer sooner.
of course.
People with Habitat for Humanity hold on a little longer. But anything will trigger a repayment. So, like,
What's the time frame for that transfer? Is there a certain time frame?
there's no time frame. It sits as a lien. So the first transfer, or if you do an action that would trigger repayment. So that means A, you don't maintain homestead, because we check homestead every year on our clients. B, you decide to refinance with cash out. That's fine, you can do that, but you have to pay us back first.
And the subsidy.
And the subsidy
The
that you got
original
as well.
And the sale.
Sale, death. That's pretty much it. So those are if any of those things happen, then it triggers a repayment, and everything is recorded as a lien. And there's an agreement between the homeowner and the city of Cape Coral in addition to that. So there's a number of mechanisms that we build into place. So we're going to see how that goes. Again, it's 5 years, 100 or 100 units, whichever's first, and then it'll get reevaluated by city council. So it was unanimously approved. We're basically kind of recommending as staff that we maintain the new process, and then we evaluate the pilot program at the time of the next review. We're going to, at the
On
time
that
of the
deferral,
next.
is it just at the original rate, or is there any interest accrued?
There is some interest, but it's capped. I'll have to look at that. It is capped.
Maximum dollar amount, or do you mean percentage?
Maximum percentage, I believe, of the amount of subsidy, because you could end up being like paying if you didn't cap it. So that's kind of where we are with that. So that's something that's different from the previous report that we're going to have to add into the new report. But I think it's a good thing. It helps our partner agencies a lot, I think. I know that as prices increase for them, it's just I think your agency saw an increase, but then in their
It's gonna
construction
help us.
costs, but it offset it,
Right.
being able
Almost dollar for dollar.
almost dollar for dollar. So which is good. So that is kind of where we are with impact fee and the impact fee programs. The next item on the list is flexible densities. That's a little more in depth, and we're not going to talk about this one. We'll talk about the next meeting, because we'll have a little more information for you at that, a little more background. The next one we're going to actually discuss is the reservation of infrastructure capacity.
What exactly does that mean?
It means reserving infrastructure capacity. So in Florida, you have adopted level of service, so you can't overcommit to the capacity in your utility system. So, so basically, let me try to explain. So, what's probably the simplest example?
Okay, so
Road
if
You're not going to max
capacity.
it out.
Yeah, you don't want to max.
Per unit
You-
or like?
No, what the
18
capacity,
people in a
say,
house?
no, what is the capacity of our utility systems? Like the north plant, the south plant, do you have enough capacity?
They always got to leave a little bit of fluff in there.
You always have to leave a little bit there. It's not really an issue here, because
We're not fully developed.
we're not fully developed.
Yeah.
And our infrastructure is planned out
We're still growing.
so far in advance, there's no reason to hold any capacity back for affordable housing. If you, like, for example, on road capacity, road capacities, you have a certain level where your roads start to fail. And when people are building along a roadway, they start to, as they get their approvals, okay, let's
I got what you mean now.
yeah, so Pine Island Road, west of Chiquita, before it was widened, that roadway, and before the extension came through, okay, so they're talking a little bit, that particular portion of Pine Island Road was tipping on being, all the roadway capacity being
Understood.
totally used up. So what Walmart wanted to come in on that site,
Been good.
they were right at the level where they would eat the end of it, which meant that no one else would get approvals on that portion of that particular roadway. So at that point, you have, as staff, you have to look at it and say, okay, this is our last thing that we're going to approve here. Everything else is done. Now, what ended up happening with the Walmart was that the trips kind of, with the new segment there, and then the widening, and then Walmart never came, so everything got wide open. So you always want to make sure you have capacity and you're not exceeding the capacity.
Got it.
That doesn't really happen here, so this is basically the same recommendation that we had at the last one, and then that we would, there's not really an advantage at this point because we're not maxing out our capacity by any means on any of our utilities or even our roadways at this point. So that's kind of where we are on that. The next incentive.
So you don't see another Walmart situation because you say it's not maxing out, but Walmart wanted to. We said
Situations change. They did get their approval, but they the situation, and that's a perfect example of how situations change. They capped out all the trips on that roadway that were going to be permitted, but when they actually started looking at actually building a couple years later, they were able to re-examine. They were able to say, you know what, all of those trips that we thought were going to be coming down Pine Island Road aren't actually. They're going around on the extension, and you know what? Now the state's widening it for us. It's wide and luxurious lanes that are going to nowhere. So, it looks great. So that circumstances are always changing, and the city is very aggressive with its utilities program and the capacity for its utilities. So, as staff, we are always reviewing capacity when we're making any sort of even land use change. We look at that. So, I don't anticipate any issues with that. I would say anytime soon. The next three items, accessory dwelling units, reduced parking, and flexible lot configurations, we'll talk about at the next meeting. There's some changes, but not a lot on that particular segment. So we'll wait because I'm going to have a little more information to follow up on with that. Another really easy one for us is the next one, which is the modification of street requirements for affordable housing. Our streets are in, for the most part. Unless you were to see a small subdivision, which frankly it's not all that common, that would not be something that we would have to address as part of this. Say someone did come in and wanted to do a small subdivision or a large subdivision, whichever. We do have mechanisms in place through our engineering design standards to administratively shrink road sizes and make them smaller. Most of the major subdivisions that you see in Cape Coral that aren't affordable have deviations for narrower streets. So if you've been into some of those, I think Sandoval has one, and some of the other big subdivisions, they narrow them because the city has standards. But so generally it's not going to be something that's going to be used here. We don't see, like I said, there's not a lot of unplatted tracts that are going to get subdivided at this point either. So that we would stick with our original recommendation as far as the modification. And like I said, affordable housing would be just another, they could go through the process that exists, so it's not a big deal. So the last two that we're going to discuss today are the process for looking at local policies and ordinances that increase the cost of housing, and the preparing of the inventory of locally public land suitable for affordable housing. First one we'll talk about is the process for reviewing policies, procedures, ordinances, and regulations. Okay, so what does that mean? And again, we're required to do this. So what that means that anytime the city is making a change to any sort of land use regulation, or, well, let's just stick with land use regulations because that's where you're mostly going to get hit. And if they are making a change, it's going to increase the cost of how the development of housing. We need to quantify what that is. So an example of this would be, let's say that the city decided that they wanted to change our existing code to say, you no longer have to do, right, we require a car and a half. That's what our current code says. Our garage has to be a car and a half car. Let's say someone came forward and said, we want the city to require 2-car garages because everyone should have a 2-car garage. Well, we would have to figure out what that per dollar per square foot cost would be and see what the impact is and say this is going to increase the cost of housing by X dollars a square foot, which would be from a 1.5 car to a 2 would be whatever, $200, whatever. We would have to do that. If, let's say, the city decided that they were going to change the landscaping code, we've actually gone through this process where we decided, okay, instead of having 3 5-gallon bushes, now you're going to have 5-gallon bushes. And instead of 2 trees, you're going to have 4 trees. We would have to go in, we'd have to figure out, okay, on average, I'm going to be spending X amount for those 3 extra bushes that I'm going to have to get, and then the 2 extra trees are going to approximately cost me X amount.
So you just have to consider that.
Put the affordability is right on the park.
So
Yeah.
we had to put a number
Right,
to
that's
it.
all over.
Now, with that number, what do you do? All right, with that number, the number doesn't really go anywhere. I would say
They
that
just want you to consider it.
then they want you to consider it, and actually it does go somewhere because every year when you submit to the state of Florida your annual report for your SHIP annual report, you're going to say over the past year the increase on housing was X amount based on ordinances that were passed by the city of Cape Coral. That's what we have to do. This is something that was put into the requirements by the building industry and their lobby at the state level because they want people to be looking, they want local governments to be looking at what are you actually, when you make these, but you're increasing the cost and you have an obligation for affordable housing, how do you get there? So that was something that was put in by the lobby, really. So that is something that we do, my staff does, mostly me because I'm also writing a lot of it. So like currently right now, we are going through a rewrite of the zoning code, which I mentioned at the last meeting. So basically the zoning code is getting thrown out, a new zoning code is coming in. Things are changing in that. We're not going 1.5 to 2 car, but we are increasing landscaping, so we are going to have to pull those numbers. We are, so that's probably the biggest thing, I think.
When do you see that new one
What are they going
in
to?
effect?
I have no idea.
What was your question?
I do know, but I'll be honest with you, we've been writing this thing for 3 years now.
I still don't have it.
We're getting really close to adoption, but the detail, I mean, when you've been spending 3 years deep into a zoning code, I can't remember all the details off the top of my head. But, so you'll see, so we'll have to report on the increase in the landscaping. I don't think there's anything else that is going to trigger any other reporting. There's some, I think some push maybe from the Planning and Zoning Commission. They might make some recommendations that staff isn't necessarily on board with, but so yeah, that's looking to be, we're looking for adoption hearings at the end of the year. So, and the rezoning of the whole city not long after. So so we'll be doing this process as part of it.
You're gonna be increasing commercial. So
Yes.
that's what
Yes.
it's for.
From everything.
It needs to. It needs to.
Yeah, one of the things that we
We're
hear.
lacking so much.
One of the things that we hear a lot of is that the lack of greenery is,
Yeah.
is something that really locally people really, they point out to us, why don't you require more landscaping?
The
Well,
county has
Landscaping,
far more
commercial.
stringent.
yeah, so that's that process, and we're gonna recommend kind of keeping it in place because we have to, but also, it's a good thing to do. It's always good to look at that type of thing. We have actually, before we even had this in place, we did have a push for a 2-car garage, and it did go down because some of our partners came in and said, we build a 1-car garage, and this is going to increase our costs. This is before we had to do that. So that was in the, were you here then? Probably early 2000s. So,
Especially when you're doing duplexes and things like that.
yeah. I mean,
Makes
a lot
sense.
of places, they don't require garages. I mean, I see the benefit of garages in Florida because we don't have basements, but also it is an impediment. I think in the new code, the only place that we're not going to require garages is going to be in the micro cottage subdivisions. So that would be the only place where you won't have garage requirements. So,
Is there been land product for that already?
no. That is going to be basically driven by a developer driven. We're not going to paint that anywhere. If someone wants to come in and do a micro cottage, then get your entitlements in place yourself. We're not painting it anywhere.
Okay.
All right, so our last item for today, and I think I'm getting us out here pretty good here, is the preparing of a printed inventory of locally owned public land suitable for affordable housing. What does that mean?
Means goodness.
So, what that means is that every 3 years, we, Millie and Amy, get to sit down with our real estate division, and we go through properties that are owned by the city of Cape Coral that are not currently being used, and look for properties that would be suitable for affordable housing. So anything that we identify as appropriate for use as affordable housing can be used to purchase land for the development. Well, we can offer it for sale, and we can use the proceeds to purchase land for affordable housing or put it in our local housing trust fund. We can sell it with a restriction that says that it has to be developed for permanent affordable housing, or we can donate it to a nonprofit housing organization for the construction of permanent affordable housing. So we have a list of criteria that we go through when we do this. So you can see on the PowerPoint on the second page, that's kind of how we have worked since the beginning when this came into play, when the legislature put this in. So we kind of looked for things that were on city utilities. We looked for things that were not designated for city projects, that had the right zoning and land use, that had the right amount of square footage to build a single family home. We went through this whole list so to find potential properties. And then what we had was we ended up with a list of 5 properties that were on the
Is that per
survey.
year? Or?
No, that was we did this at least twice.
This is the third time.
So this was the third time. Yeah.
We did one in 16, then 13,
And then
and 10.
10, yeah. So we've done it 3 times. It was the same 3 properties, or same 5 properties every time that came up. we never did anything with them.
That's what I'm saying. What's the?
So finally, what
That's what I was
happened?
kinda- 'cause I thought I've seen these. I thought I've seen these. addresses
So
before.
finally, what happened?
This year we can do that.
So this year, our partner agencies just came in and asked for them. They went to the city manager and they said, "Can we have these properties?"
It's been.
Prior
It's only
council,
been.
prior council wasn't too
Oh,
into it.
Oh.
Yeah.
To donate again?
Years ago.
Prior administrations were
Yeah,
not.
administrations,
Yes, it was not
I
the
tried
council.
Long time.
But this administration took it to the city council. The city council was like, "Sure, let's donate them." So they donated them to Cape Coral Housing and Habitat for Humanity. And now our list is empty.
So this list,
We want
these
more.
are not. These are already
Yeah.
gone.
The houses are already
But
built
and you
and sold.
can drive
Oh,
by
they're already
and
built,
see-
sold.
Yeah, they're building
You can
these.
see what we built on top
okay,
three.
cool.
If anyone wants to
Housing
see
we
them,
built.
Gotcha. Cool.
3 of them are definitely
Which
built.
Top three.
Top three?
Which one went to?
The
The
first
top 3
3.
went to my agency, Cape Coral
Yeah,
Housing.
and the bottom 2 went to Habitat.
I think I'm multi.
Yeah, they took the multi, but they're building single family on it. So,
It's
Me,
got
I'm gonna
zoning
watch
change.
it go up.
what's that?
They just said a zoning change on it?
No, you don't have to.
You don't have to,
You can do
just-
single family and multifamily
Okay, good.
zoning. So now the list is empty. But there also is a push in the current administration to really look at the land that we have. Like, up until this point, the land has really been, when we get the list, it's been really scrubbed. There's really, everything is claimed. The administration has asked that our real estate division really go back and look at everything again and really figure out what are we really using, what are we really not. So they're looking at that very seriously. We are going to talk with administration on, moving up our review of it before they decide to, if they decide to dump everything, we still would like to be able to look at some of them because we feel there are some properties on there that would be beneficial for our partner agencies. Some regular single family that's on infill that would be good for our partner agencies. So at this point, we are going to we're going to do the process again with the new list of whatever real estate comes out with, and hopefully be able to identify a couple more that our agencies can use. Really, it's critical. It's really, really nice to be able to have the agencies have properties that are donated, that are in infill areas, because they're ideal for our lower income clients, because they don't have to worry about utilities coming in. Right now, all the properties that Cape Coral Housing owns are predominantly north of Pine Island Road, which means when we put clients into those properties, we in advance of knowing when the utilities are coming in, we back out the amount that we assume is their mortgage is going to go up. So they might go to a 27% instead of a 30% of their income because
They're already backing it out to make sure they qualify.
So-
when it hits, they don't.
so
they don't-
they're
they don't
not-
get blindsided.
right. So they're not blindsided. So when they come in and they say, "Oh my God, I got this notice from the city that says that I'm going to have like $200 more in my escrow that I'm going to need to put in," we can say, "We knew that you knew this. You could afford it then. You can afford it
We
now.
planned it for
we
you."
planned it for you." So, and both of our agencies do that. Both Habitat and Cape Coral Housing back
Absolutely.
everything out because
Gotcha.
It'd
what we,
backfire on us if we didn't.
what we don't want to do is see our clients not
Succeed.
be successful, and we really pride ourselves that we have a very low foreclosure rate with our clients. So better than what was norms around Cape Coral in 2008, I can tell you that much. So
We're just gonna leave those stats out.
yeah. So we're going to continue doing this. Keep your eyes peeled because this will probably be coming forward soon, I would assume. So we're working in the background right now on this, but we will continue to do this on a triennial basis like we're supposed to. It might be moved up a little bit because technically we're supposed to do it next year, but with them doing all this work now, we don't want everything to be gone and then us having to do our report. So that's kind of where we are. That was all of the topics that I wanted to hit on today. As I said, at the next meeting, we're going to go through some of the other ones that you're going to see some changes. Specifically, we'll talk about accessory dwelling units, which is one that the board has always recommended against. but is in the new code moving forward. So we will see.
When did that change?
Yeah.
Well, it's being proposed as part of the new zoning code.
Okay, it's coming from the state or federal government?
No, it's coming locally.
Local?
Yeah.
who's making that
The recommendation is coming as part of the new zoning code. So this board has always recommended against it. So that I'm bringing it to you. So you say, okay, this is in the forefront in the future. I don't know, and no one knows what the council is going to do. The council makes the final decision. They could say absolutely not.
It's a different
The
council.
Planning and Zoning Commission can say absolutely not. But we'll talk about it a little more in detail at the next meeting. But that's a big change that we need to spend a little more time on. Okay? So that's probably the biggest one for next week. Other than, I think that's about it. So that's probably the bigger thing that we'll talk about. I may or may not have one of the other planning staff there with me here. Probably not, because I've been writing it with them. So I'm kind of a default. So that's all I have for tonight. I think I got you out of here in an hour.
Less than an hour.
Yeah,
Hell of a job.
so my throat hurts now. But so take this, marinate on it. Again, can't talk to each other, but if you want to talk about something with myself, always easier by email. Like, Amy, I want to talk to you. Can I set up a time? Or, Amy, here's my question. And we can, if you have a question on what's happening with the new code or whatever, reach out to me. Plan next week. Hopefully we'll have a quorum.
Next week?
Sorry, the 23rd, excuse me. 23rd. Sorry, I'm moving ahead a week.
You want to get on that vacation in December?
Yeah, I really do. We will go over the rest. If the board is comfortable making recommendations on each at that meeting, we can. If not, we can do it at the following meeting that's scheduled. We're going to try to get this done, so
Otherwise, we don't get our money.
otherwise we don't get our money.
We need our money.
Bonnie needs money, she says. So we'll figure out from there. And like I said, that's all I have. So.
All right, so we got Tuesday, October 23rd, 2018 at 5:30, conference room 220A. Next
That's
meeting.
right here. Yeah.
Meeting adjourned.
Other than that, motion to adjourn.
Second to adjourn.
Third.
Second.